I think activism is actually an amplified vision of being human.
Hello, everybody. Thank you for joining us for another episode of the First Amendment Museum's one-on-one interview series. I'm Max Nospish. I'm the manager of visitor experiences here at the First Amendment Museum located in Augusta, Maine. Today, I'm joined by Rabbi Menachem Creditor, who will be answering some questions about, of course, as everyone knows, the First Amendment.
Well, hi, friends, far and near. My name is Menachem Creditor. It's my honor to serve as scholar in residence for UJA Federation of New York. I'm an ordained rabbi, which means a teacher in the Jewish community. I'm an author. I like to sing. I live with my family here in New York.
Thank you for joining us.
Thanks, Max. It's good to be here.
So my first question is, and again, we ask this to everybody, do you think the First Amendment is important? And if so, why do you think it's important? And what is its purpose?
I appreciate the question. Obviously, I do. What's really wonderful is that if I didn't, I would be exercising the rights that it gave me to say so. The First Amendment is in so many ways the protection that gives rise to what we consider the best parts of American democracy when it works. And that is part of what makes our society so fragile. But part of what makes us in our best sense is our ability and our right, our protected right to express ourselves. So yes, I do believe it's important. And yes, I do think it is a very fragile right, understood by different people in different ways, which is both its glory and the dangers inherent in a free society.
So what does freedom of religion mean to you as a Jewish American?
Jewish history is full of examples of repression, not just overt anti-Semitism and, God forbid, violence, which has, of course, been part of Jewish history and part of many different faiths' histories. But the right to practice my religion as a guarantee by the government is something that should never be taken for granted. But given that the majority of America still identifies, and things do change, but identifies as Christian, the First Amendment guarantees me the right to practice and be protected as a practicing Jew, outwardly and in my private life, not only free of judgment of my neighbors, but protected by society itself. The government guarantees me the right to be a Jew. And given that I'm a student of Jewish history and a teacher of Jewish history, not only do I not take that for granted, I teach my children, my students, my community, how precious it is and how therefore we should be so grateful to be in a society that grants us that right, especially because it is so exceptional in human history for individuals, especially minorities within communities, to be protected.
So can you tell us what is the UJA Federation of New York and what kind of work does it do?
So UJA Federation of New York, where I'm honored really deeply to serve as scholar in residence and rabbi, is a philanthropy. It is a convening body for the Jewish community of New York. And our mission is to provide services and to work for the dignity of New Yorkers of all kinds, to work for Jews all around the world to make sure that they are safe, protected, and thriving when it comes to the content, the richness of our tradition. We are active in Israel. We are active in Ukraine, in Poland. Our funding supports in incredible measure grassroots organizing all around the world. Here in New York, we do a lot of work to alleviate poverty, to protect survivors of domestic violence, to work for racial justice, to work in interfaith circles, to provide social services really for everyone. We raise $250 million every year, thanks to our donors, and we partner with core agencies who provide social services and Jewish programming all around the world.
But what has been one of your proudest moments as an activist and why?
Yeah, I appreciate the question a lot. And, we had a little bit of a conversation before, so I could think about what kind of answer feels most authentic to me. I think an activist doesn't really think in those terms. So I want to not duck the question, but think out loud about what it represents. The goal of an activist is to be irrelevant. I don't want to have to push for justice. I want there to be justice, in which case I will be proud when I don't have to do this anymore, when we don't have to do this anymore. Activism as a Jew is also a very interesting thing to consider. I grew up very active as a child because of my parents' leadership in the marches in solidarity with Soviet Jewry. Because during the days of the Soviet Union, Jews who wanted to leave, either to emigrate to the United States or to Israel, were not allowed. And the expression of religion in that country was forbidden. And so activism was for the sake of Jewish survival and continuity. And now that, of course, remains part of our vigilance, but that's insufficient. Judaism at its core teaches to love your neighbor as yourself, which means your neighbor. My neighbor might be an atheist. My neighbor might be a Christian. My neighbor, whoever they are, has burdens that I'm called to help support. That's the work of UJA and the work of an activist. So what's my proudest moment? My proudest moment is when I can hold in my memory being in a stroller on a march for Soviet Jewry while I push my child in their stroller during the Pride Parade. It's really, really essential, I think, for people of any commitment, be it a faith commitment, be it aspirational nationalism, whatever it is, to recognize that our pride must be when we are in service. If I'm exercising my voice, which the First Amendment gives me every right to, only for the purpose of self, I have forgotten what it is to be part of the fabric of society. And then society itself is in danger if that becomes contagious. If I'm only out for myself, then I'm using my First Amendment in violation of my deepest core human callings.
So beyond your activism, how do you utilize the First Amendment in your everyday life?
I think activism is actually an amplified vision of being human. Right? Being human, in my understanding, is a call for me derived from faith, from the Torah, to remember that God's image is not exclusively me nor my immediate family. And so to be human in a Jewish sense is to walk through the world with a notion of self and other as being equally worthy of divine love through human action. So you say beyond my life as an activist. Well, my life as an activist is simply a public version of my private self. I exercise the First Amendment in having conversations like this, which are manifestations of my faith. And so I can articulate my opinion in public discourse, be it in synagogue, which is, again, protected because of the First Amendment. And you could consider, given the scope of Jewish history, going to synagogue itself activism, even though many of us take it for granted. Except when anti-Semitism has been on the rise, as it has been recently, going to synagogue can feel like an act of courage. The fact that when I go to a synagogue, my local police can be there and often are to give us a sense of protectedness and actually provide protection. I might not think of that as the First Amendment, but that is the First Amendment. And then when there has been, let's say, an elected official with whom I disagree, the fact that I don't feel threatened to disagree with them, to hope that someone else and maybe work toward someone else being elected, that's the First Amendment. So the line between personal life and activism, it's really where you're doing it, right? And what's interesting too, I know you're not asking in this dimension, but let me offer it. The fact that the First Amendment is also a conversation that we must continue to have. What are the limitations of it? What is clear and present danger, which is one of the conditions as the Supreme Court has continued to explore the dangers of incitement through speech. right? We are in a moment of communal polarization where if we don't see the connectivity between personal life and public expression, our neighbors suffer, and maybe we do too. There's what a theologian who is also a physician and an incredible global activist for justice, Paul Farmer, who just died recently, he called this pragmatic solidarity. I should want to protect you because it's the right thing to do, but it is also true that if I don't stand for you, who will stand for me? And so it is also an act of self-preservation to preserve the First Amendment rights of someone I disagree with. That paradox gives me the right to speak like this with you, which isn't being an activist, it's just talking with a new friend.
So, Rabbi, thank you so much for joining us. Thank you so much for taking the time out of your busy schedule for this call and this interview. Do you have anything you want to promote, plug, get out there? Anything that you're doing or the UJA, Federation of New York, is doing?
Thank you. Yeah, I'd love to invite everyone to check out the work of UJ Federation of New York. We are constantly looking for new ways to do good with other people in the world. And in terms of what I would have people do, love your neighbor, really. Think about a new way that you can do that and just do it.
Awesome. Thank you. I think that's one of the best plugs we've had.